Welcome back to the table, friends. I am your humble host, GreyDMs, and with me, as always, is my co-host and co-conspirator, Owen.
Hi.
You are listening to Tabletop by Night, a weekly podcast where we continue our exploration of Vampire the Masquerade. Tonight, we gather around the table to ask the question, have you ever been in a fight? So, we are joined by two guests, Jason and Max. And tonight, we're going to do something pretty interesting, but before we do that, I'd like to say a bit and explain kind of some things about the rest of the year and the podcast and what we're doing. So first and foremost, to all our friends, old and new, who have joined us at this table this year, we would like to extend our deepest thanks and our warmest wishes that your holiday may be filled with joy, peace, and as much vitae as your dark hearts desire.
But not too much.
Not too much, because, then the Inquisition might come looking for you.
Yeah.
This will be the last episode of the year, as we are planning on spending our remaining time evolving both the process and the content of this podcast. So although we will not be sharing time together at the table for the next few weeks, know that we will be returning in the new year, and with that, no doubt, will be a more polished and fun experience for us all.
We hope.
It's the goal. During our absence, we are asking for your help in providing some feedback about the show. When this episode goes live on YouTube, there should be a link in the description to a small anonymous survey. It should only take a few minutes, and you can feel free to leave as little or as much feedback as you like. However, if you have strong opinions about what we are doing here, this is your time to provide us direct feedback.
Yes.
What you would or would not like to hear in the coming year. Lastly, dear friends, we have no intention of letting the holidays pass without taking the opportunity to give you a little gift for your patronage and presence at our table. For those who are interested, a peek into our version of the World of Darkness should be posted sometime in the next month as a little holiday bonus. So, and
I was not told about this.
It's a surprise to everyone.
Oh, okay. I'm surprised.
And with that, we are going to go on to Vampire Fight Club here. So let's
Don't talk about it.
Yeah, first rule, everybody talks about Vampire Fight Club. Okay, so to establish the conversation that we're going to be having tonight, in previous episodes we talked about how kind of pointless and geeky it was to argue about how many vampires could werewolf and all that stuff, and how kind of these pointless power discussions and, who could beat up who across media are like really geeky and wasteful times. Well, for the end of the year, we're just going to do that. It's going to be fun. So I've got some loose rules here. So basically, we're imagining a setting that's about 6 square blocks of urban sprawl. So you could think maybe like Brooklyn, or you could think like Detroit, whatever kind of, basis you want, but about that much space, and think about that, that population that would be in there. So there are people, there'd be like police officers, whatever you want in there. Basically, both creatures that enter are aware of their target. So not like supernaturally like aware, but they both know going in with all the information. So nothing like they don't know they're in a fight or something like that. This is a proper fight club. We want to get rid of all the ambiguity when it starts. On the kindred side the Vampire the Masquerade side, kindred, we imagine 2 different kindred, right? So when we're talking here, you're going to imagine a neonate. Figure they have access to pretty much any level 2 discipline, maybe a 3-dot, maybe a 4-dot if they stretched it. So you figure somewhere in between, freshly embraced to sub 100 years old, somewhere between neonate and ancient. So like, we're not going to like describe one specifically, but like that's the type of character you're thinking. These are the characters that most people play at the table.
Right. And
just for fun, we're also going to imagine in the conversation, what if that was replaced with like a Methuselah?
Okay.
So now we're talking about someone who has multiple 4 to 5 dot disciplines. They might have even crafted some sort of an amalgamation. That's kind of weird. They pretty much got all the basic ones mapped out. This is someone who is multi-hundreds of, years old. So those are kind of the rules on that side. Not both of them at the same time. We're just trying to imagine which one. So, and then I'm going to give basically a character from media. It could be books, video games, movies. Some of them will kind of go into a little bit of a discussion over what their supposed powers are. Some of these you may recognize. I'm sure there's some of them that, no one will know all of them because, it's a pretty big list. We're going to start on kind of what I imagine is probably the gimme section, and then we'll kind of move up. And feel free, listeners, to have opinions about this. Just get in and tell us how we're wrong.
Yeah, just get in those comments. Tell us what we did wrong. How stupid we are.
So, dear brave, members of Vampire Fight Club, our first fight for the night is the infected from I Am Legend. Not the new one, but the original, the book. So here's a little readout so we can get clarification on what these are. Those infected with vampirus, which is virus, will suffer vampirism-like symptoms. They will go hysterically blind near mirrors. They cannot stand sunlight or garlic. Their canines will grow into fangs, and they will develop a bulletproof adhesive and a craving for blood. Vampires with a Christian background will also take the sign of the cross as a sign of betrayal and be repelled by it. Also, due to the bacteria's anaerobic nature inside the body, if a vampire is cut deeply enough, the vampirus bacteria in their body will sporulate into dust and escape, reducing the former host to powder and killing them.
Ooh.
So if anybody's seen the old Vincent Price version of I Am Legend, this was kind of before the zombie craze had kind of codified what a zombie was. So vampires were somewhere between the two. And there were people who had been taking drugs to get a control of this. And they were normal functioning. So this is kind of, and we could talk about the new I Am Legend too, but this is basically probably the weakest type of vampire I could find. So, neonate, Methuselah, what are your opinions?
I think a gangrel neonate would probably tear him apart.
Yeah. Any sharp claws, anything,
A crucifix and a knife, and he's
Pretty much.
So if it's just them getting cut open deep enough, then yeah.
Yeah, and what is deep enough? Is it just is that a mortal wound to a normal person? Is it also a mortal wound to them? Or is it just if they get struck in the heart sort of thing?
That's a good question. There's probably a lot of weird stuff that we'd have to consult over. But I think we can safely say that this probably goes to the masquerade kindred, right?
Yeah, easily.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So this one, and some of these might not be in order of difficulty, especially when I started reading into him some more. So this is a character that some of us are going to know a little bit better than others. And we're going to discuss Vamp from Metal Gear Solid. So, although Vamp's only real armament was his seemingly unlimited supply of knives, with which he was extremely skilled, he also displayed extraordinary physical capabilities. For one, his strength, speed, and agility were far beyond that of a normal person, to the extent that he could even parry bullets with his knives, with his ability extending to superhuman levels. His skills with knives were so extensive enough that Solid Snake, acting as Iroquois Pliskin, referred to him as a wizard of knives when discussing him with Raiden. He also possessed an enhanced sense of smell, as he managed to identify that Navy SEAL Iroquois Pliskin was actually Solid Snake solely from the latter's scent. So during the Big Shell incident, Vamp demonstrated several gravity-defying talents, including but not limited to catapulting himself multiple feet in the air without any momentum, walking on water, running vertically up a support pillar, in addition to surfacing from heavily oxygenated, essentially non-buoyant water. Vamp also had the ability to accurately predict the movements of an enemy by observing their muscles and thus react accordingly. It was assured, however, that this ability could be nullified and the enemy in question was wearing a pressurized suit. He also seemed to have a degree of control over shadows. This was especially apparent during his fight with Raiden in the Purification Chamber, where he could impale Raiden's shadow and prevent him from moving. In addition to all of that, during his main battle with Raiden, he appeared at times to be surrounded by an orangish red aura that surfaced after surfacing from heavily oxygenated water and was invulnerable to most attacks in this state. However, perhaps Vamp's most notable trait was his apparent immortality. During the Big Shell incident, Vamp appeared to die on 3 separate occasions, each caused by Raiden. This was later figured out to be due to the nanomachines inside his body, and basically when he was injected with a inhibitor, that's when he basically was allowed to die. So Vamp and a neonate enter into this 6-box. Now, this is why I say there's a 6-box radius.
Yeah.
So basically, you can think of a bunch of different types of neonates. And so do you think, and like I said, Methuselah too. So.
So I think, so I think a Ventru might be able to take care of it.
Yeah. So Vamp was basically human.
Yeah, he's an enhanced human.
And the whole thing at the end of it, there was nothing totally supernatural.
He was killed by humans, even though they're genetically altered, perfect soldier type guys. But at the end of the day, it's like they were still humans. Having said that, like
he did have some powers that could cause some trouble.
Yeah, so like any neonate that doesn't have like any kind of mental powers, it's purely physical, like celerity, protean, like that kind of stuff. Fam could probably handle it.
Yeah.
Like I said, I put him pretty low originally.
His bullets, that's pretty fucking fast.
Yeah, I put him pretty low initially, and then when I was kind of digging up the details, I was like, oh, man, he's a guy who has like max stats and a couple abilities.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, like if you rip his head off, the nanomachines don't do anything.
Right.
So that falls in line with like, okay, so this is like more a science-y created vampire as opposed to supernatural. So I think when you get into like more supernatural kind of abilities, they're going to override whatever he's got going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is kind of interesting question. So one of the things I neglected to mention before is if it's not a home run, we can think of like, what do you think? 1 out of 10, what is a kindred's chance of taking down Vamp?
7 out of 10.
More kindred bait. So definitely like not a sure thing, but like probably heavily in his favor.
Right.
And then what about a Methuselah?
0.
A 0 and Vamp winning.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
Like he's basically splattered.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's go into the next one. So let me give you the abilities that this fighter has, right? This fighter is quite probably the fastest vampire in his family. He's a skilled fighter, known for his speed rather than being the strongest. He has sharp senses, superhuman strength, speed, endurance, and a healing factor, and agility. Describes himself as the most dangerous predator in the world, whereas his appearance, sense, and voice are enormously attractive to his prey. He explains, he doesn't need to breathe. He doesn't digest human food. All that's kind of normal stuff. And also possesses a gift for reading the thoughts of those around him. This is described as hearing voices like of the people around him. So he doesn't have to touch them, interact with them. So how would a neonate deal with Edward Cullen from Twilight?
This one's going to be hard to base an opinion on. Just my disgust for Twilight.
Yeah.
So I was forced to watch like the last movie in that series. It's so fucking awful. You can't even say like, were the book ones any different? Because it's all a bunch of shit. So I don't. The only advantage is like, okay, the dude can walk around in daylight.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, plus he's going to have all the tweens following him around for a week.
But
yeah,
having said that,
how's the neonate deal with a bunch of 13-year-old girls?
There's being able to read thoughts and being able to just flat out fucking control them. It's like, well, hey, he's really fast and he's pretty strong, but like compared to literally any other kindred.
Yeah.
And can he read the thoughts of vampires or just mortals?
I think he's supposed to be able to. All voices.
Mm.
He has to focus on it. Like it can overwhelm him apparently, unless he like.
So if he goes up against Malkavian, he's probably just on the floor.
Drooling.
Yeah. Malkavian just kind of stabs him in the head a couple times until there's nothing left.
I think any neonate wipes the floor with him and probably quite a few thin bloods.
Well, okay, so he is from a franchise in which vampires are at their strongest when they're born.
Yeah.
Which was another thing that made no sense
they get
to me.
Weaker as they.
Yeah, so the idea is that like when they're turned, there's so much like human blood in their body that they're like. So they do this whole thing of like when he turns Bella, Bella goes to hug him and he's like, "Oh my god, you're crushing me." And there's this whole thing where one of the strategies that like vampires have is they go mass embrace because their kids are like so strong that, basically they can go beat up all the older. I was like, that makes no sense. Why would you ever have elder vampires?
Right.
Like, so it's weird. I think like technically if you really got nitty gritty about it, there's probably a chance that he could kill some neonates, but let's be honest. Anybody who's like been a vampire longer than 10 years in the world of darkness is probably so battle hardened compared to this dude.
Yeah,
he's go
absolutely.
Like it's almost just like a joke. He's like the the caitiff who wandered into the woods is like, I only feed on deer in the woods and stuff. And the rest are just like, did we eat that guy yet? Is he still out there? All right. So here's one. So this one's a little tough because sometimes you're just burdened by the amount of material you're in.
Oh, no.
But Selene from Underwood.
No,
Underwood. Yeah, Underwood.
Underworld.
That was a good show, too. So, Selene is proficient with many weapons, medieval and modern. She's well versed with both projectiles and melee weapons. As a vampire, she frequently has demonstrated superior physical abilities. So, you can get them. She has superhuman agility, superhuman healing, superhuman strength and speed, superhuman senses, superhuman durability. She has blood sorting, which means that she can basically, when she drinks the blood of like a kindred or a person, she can see their memories. It's something that developed as the series went across. She has sensory synchronization, which only really works with his daughter. She also gains the ability to resurrect dead vampires by putting her blood on their hearts. Like I said, they made too many of these movies.
Yeah. I guess the question comes down to where in her life is this version that's fighting?
Yeah, and I'm thinking pretty much her at her relative peak. The main advantage that she got as the series went over, aside from gaining the ability to walk out in sunlight in the second movie, was her speed kept getting better. Like in one of the movies, I think the fourth movie, they went through a whole thing where all of a sudden she basically got super fast. And also in the third movie, after she had drinking the blood of Corvinus, she basically was strong enough, kind of like her sire, where she could essentially kill a werewolf by snapping its neck.
Wow.
Yeah, she got stupid strong towards the end of the series. So I kind of came to the realization that there is kind of trying to compare her. She's kind of an elder.
Yeah.
That's kind of where she is. But she is that world does not really have any type of mystical things aside from she got really fast or you can talk to the spirits. But as far as Tremere blood sorcery or a variety of other things, that just doesn't exist. So you're thinking of a physical based elder in comparison to the abilities that a neonate could get.
And what I guess it's been a long time since I've watched those movies. Do they have anything like Dominate or anything like that in that version?
The other thing is they had special weaponry and shit.
Yeah.
Because I'm they had
the sun bullets.
Daylight or silver or things like that. That was the other thing is weaknesses of some of them. Because I think silver, no.
No, and that one is UV. UV was the thing.
Yeah. Blade.
Yeah, Blade had which we'll get to in a second.
Get to him.
So
I think if we're talking at her peak, a neonate would have no chance.
Yeah, she was a hunter.
Yeah,
and a death stalker.
Yeah,
and so she's probably the kind that's going to go kill vampires pretty quickly.
I think even a Methuselah, when you reach the point of where she was towards the end of those movies, would have a very difficult time.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I think the Methuselah is kind of more in the reign of the utility, right? Because if you think of it, if it's a Bruja or a Gangrel or something like that, that's what she was meant to hunt.
Yeah.
So that would be in this weird place where you're hey, really? Maybe not. But definitely if she just goes up against something that just has a completely different skill set.
Yeah, if she goes after a Methuselah, Ventru, Tremere,
just something with auspex that knows where she is at all times.
Yeah.
At a certain point, you're just I'm going to pull down that building on you, or I'm just going to go ghoul everybody and start hitting you with a car over and over and over again. So yeah, it's interesting. But I think you're right. I think she's probably too much for a neonate.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Yeah. So I also grouped, because we're about to go into the damn fear, a bunch of damn fear that we found. Two other ones that came up that were kind of in the domain of Selene was Lestat from Interview with a Vampire and Spike from Buffy. I stopped because they're basically just vampires. So at that point you're comparing what could easily be adapted to Vampire the Masquerade, and then you're just kind of well, who has the better, And Lestat's kind of thing where eventually he drinks the blood of the Elder and he can walk out in sunlight, but other than that, there's not really enough to turn that into a better discussion.
I believe just watched Interview with the Vampire. I think it was yesterday or the day before.
No.
It was on.
Yeah, we watched it recently too.
Oh.
That's a good movie. Okay, so let's start going through the Damphir, or like the half vampires. First one that we'll pick out is Blade.
Why?
So you can pick Marvel Comics version of him, which is a little bit different, or you could pick the movie version of him.
I mean, here you have a guy that's designed to kill vampires. So Neonate, I don't think would have much of a chance.
It's like they flat out state in the comics and the movies, all the strength of the vampire, none of their weaknesses save the thirst.
Interesting.
It's kind of, plus, like, and this even more so than Underworld, specialized equipment specifically for killing vampires.
Yeah. I mean, that is 100% true. But
then again, they don't share the same weaknesses from Marvel.
Yeah, but he had, like, you look at the movies, he had stuff that created sunlight and, shit like that.
Yeah, but like, then again, Vampire the Masquerade is like, it's not UV, it's sunlight.
Right.
Right. And Blade's very much in a world of like, where it's technology.
Right.
I think we could easily kind of concede the neonate part of it. Like Blade probably just being who he is going to probably screw up even a gangrel, right?
Oh,
like,
definitely. Just because he knows
thinking out
fight.
roomfuls of neonates.
But you're talking about a Methuselah, and you're talking about like a Stat or like Dracula.
Yeah, when you hit a Methuselah level, because I mean, even in the second movie where he fought Dracula, and it's just like he had a very hard time.
Yeah, and when you're like, now that person is not just some beefed up,
right?
Until he fell into a pool of blood.
Yeah.
On his film, it's like, okay.
That was every Blade movie, right? Like, just like, he's like, I'm getting my butt kicked until I get an infusion of blood.
Yeah.
And then you get the cool music kick in, and then he starts really beating the crap out of people. I love those movies, but we did a binge watch of those recently.
Yeah. No, I don't think he would have much of a chance against him.
I mean, what is he going to do against like the Flesh Cathedral? Like, he's like, congratulations, you've killed all the things in here. Let me take that arm from you. Thank you. Let me take that leg from you. He's like, oh.
Plus, it's like, none of those vampires had like anything like to dominate.
Yeah, once again, like, just dominate, majesty, like all these things that would just kind of mess with them a little bit. But it's pretty interesting. So let's crank it up. I think that might be the last one that the vampires have a chance to win. So, speaking on the Damphir, the half vampire one, Alucard from Castlevania.
Oh, so fun.
So, let's see. Dark magic, shape-shifting, speed, strength, summoning, swordsman skills, superhuman senses.
Technology,
like
the son of the vampire.
So I guess we have to think of like, are we just writing out neonate from the rest of this? Probably.
Yeah, I mean, neonate's just gone. I mean, so here you have something that probably shares the same weaknesses with a lot of the Masquerade vampires, but at the same time has so many trump cards that what does it even matter?
Yeah, master variety of
somebody's possessing magical items.
He's kind of like, basically, if you just go through the whole like discipline chart and just start dumping all the disciplines and merits on one character,
pretty much.
Like, and like you have different like interpretations of them, but like, and so we might have to shift into like, where in VTM from like Methuselah up to Cain, do you think he would encounter a problem? Because that's going to be a reoccurring thing from down the list.
Right.
Well, by the time, like, if you get to like an antediluvian, right? If you compare like abstract things like what happens the last time an antediluvian woke up during modern times?
Continents.
Yeah, it was a city was on fire, and they had to get fucking satellites to reflect the sun directed at him, like that kind of shit. So I mean, like, at that point,
so you're somewhere in Methuselah antediluvian.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
He's gonna encounter, and it probably largely depends on
which one.
Yeah, which one it is. What is their skill set?
It'll be an anime battle of epic proportions.
And I think there's probably a lot of people right now are probably screaming at it. Once you get to antediluvian, they're beyond Dracula, but like. This is where the discussion would happen.
But it's like I kind of feel like Alucard is what an antediluvian would be. in a lot of ways. Like we can fantasize about what an antediluvian would be capable of, but like that's kind of what I see him as, at least capability wise.
And then the other point of that is, though, if you were to take Alucard and put him into the Masquerade lore, if he's the son of Dracula, well, he's fifth generation. So I mean, like right there,
he's up there.
Yeah, I think the antediluvian thing, like, I agree. I think he's right in that wheelhouse. I think the antediluvian thing is like there's a lot of like fans that know a lot of lore about Masquerade, and like antediluvians are plot devices.
Yeah.
So there's just going to be so many feats that they're going to claim that one or the other did that put them in this weird realm where you're like, that's not just someone you can go punch.
Right.
Like any time in the lore that we've read over the past year, anytime somebody has taken an antediluvian on him and like, oh yeah, I went and fought this person and killed them, they haven't, and that person is usually supplanted or turned into something. Right? Like the only time they've died is when it's like written off screen that somebody got to them. So like I do agree that like if you're in a world that has rules, Alucard should be like, as portrayed in Castlevania, he should be up in the level of antediluvians. But in Vampire the Masquerade, antediluvians are like beyond rules.
Right.
They're like in the realm of just like, it's crazy stuff.
like you could say like, oh yeah, he killed Dracula. People are like, oh yeah, sure, he could have killed Dracula.
Yeah. Yeah, he's
beyond that.
So to make it worse, let's move to the next one. D from Vampire Hunter D.
There should be, instead of like win loss, it'd be like does not apply.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out like, because now we're including someone who has like incredible magic, who like,
it just becomes pointless.
Yeah, so it's just like, what is the thing here? And so I think we are encountering a problem that I probably didn't see, which was like the whole concept of like you would just have to have somebody have something written in. Some discipline, because I mean, bear in mind that when you start looking at the disciplines above 5 dot, some of those are just I win buttons.
Yeah, they are ridiculous abilities that just blur the bounds of reality.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of a better way to phrase this, so this continues to be interesting. Like, how many Methuselah can you throw out?
How many 12-year-olds can you kill?
How many are there?
Well, maybe we can take a step back here, because this one's actually pretty interesting to me, because I put this name on the list and I thought he was going to be super high, and then I started trying to use available data. And this is kind of weird, but like this one goes out to Jason. Strahd von Zarovich.
That would be, I mean, that's a different like realm.
Yeah, so here's the thing, right? If you go look up his stat profile, he's not that different from a human. Like,
no.
he's got, okay, so here are the things that we're going to consider. Physical abilities, he's basically, you could just max out a character sheet, that's fine. He's got shape change. He's got misform. If you kill him, he turns into mist, goes back to his, he's got regeneration. He's got vampire weaknesses, spider climb, stake to the heart, all that stuff. Attacks with a long sword, not super stat wise a creature. Like, you're comparing him into things that are D&D. He's basically stat wise, he's a good fight for like a party full of geared out adventures. But when you start comparing him to Vampire the Masquerade, like, those don't really hold up to Methuselah stuff.
No.
Except he's also a caster.
Yeah, I was just thinking fireball someone.
And he can do up to 8th level spells. So he can do force cage, teleport, disintegrate, mass suggestion, maze. Like, he's basically a mage vampire.
Yeah.
So kind of like Alucard too, which we didn't really go into, who had a lot of access to like dark magic. These are people who are like, oh, yeah, I'm going to be like a Methuselah, but also I'm going to go take a mage.
To mix them together.
Yeah. So these are like, it's kind of interesting. I think he would basically be like, if you took like a Tremere Methuselah and you took like a Brewhob Methuselah and maybe a Ventru, and you kind of shared all their abilities together, that's where you get like a Strahd.
Vampire Masquerade version of Counterspell.
Counterspell.
Yeah,
well,
I think-
one thing, does he have true seeing?
He has.
He's undead, right? Don't they all?
I don't think all of them do.
That was a different. No. Let's see. He has dark vision. So he has dark vision and he has a passive perception of 20.
So a good Nosferatu could literally just walk up and stake him through the back.
It might be possible. And then he would come back and he would know that there's something weird going on.
Right, and you have to do so many hit points of damage to kill the
Does he
thing
have
that's
access to your
castle
true sight
before
of
it
his
actually
spell?
hurts him.
Or is that True Sight's like a divine type of spell, so mages wouldn't get it, would they?
He in the new version, True Sight, I think is he would probably be able to get it. He has enough spell, like he definitely has the spell slots to be in that realm. And then of course there's the whole other question, which I was expecting Jason probably to, but he is the master of his domain of dread,
Right.
which means he also like is technically a demigod. So like if you fight him there, it's a completely different story.
Yeah, but we're not there. We're in
Not
a
there.
6 block.
If he shows up in Brooklyn,
Then it's not the same because then he doesn't have his
Lair abilities.
and his hit points that you have to do before you actually start doing hit points to him.
so very interesting. You guys think? I think we've written out neonate. I thought neonates would last a little bit longer, but whatever.
I don't think a neonate would be able to handle much. I think, honestly, yes, he is powerful as a spellcaster, but I think stat-wise, as just a fighter, he's a very strong human.
Yeah, like he's like a little buffed up.
Yeah,
He's like
maybe a ghoul even.
yeah. I think he's a vampire using blood buff.
Yeah.
He's like there,
I-
but like
I think in a physical fight, I don't think he'd fare very well. But
yeah, I think we learned that playing the
yeah,
Haste is awesome.
if you're in his realm or if he's allowed to start casting magic, I don't think they would do very well in it.
Interesting. I thought he'd be higher, and then turned out. So this one, no one probably is going to know about, and it may just stir up a bunch of discussion. Manfred von Karstein is basically the kind of like the Strahd, but in Warhammer Fantasy. Same kind of deal, except he's like a necromancer. He has vampiric powers, elemental magic. He can control nature elements like wind and rain, and even command trees and stones to act as soldiers.
Badass.
Obviously, enhanced strength, speed, regeneration abilities. He can drain the life force from enemies to heal himself and gain strength. He also basically can collect and utilize books of Nagash. So basically, that lets him learn more kind of dark lore and stuff. Probably something a lot of people could comment about, but I don't think the people at this table know enough.
No, unfortunately
he's
not.
familiar with 40k lore.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I threw this one in because it's a vampire.
Sanguinis.
Mephiston, the
okay.
chief librarian of the Blood Angels. So let's go through. Mephiston, known as the Lord of Death, is a chief librarian of the Blood Angels, Space Marines, and former 40k. He's a master psyker, one of the most powerful psychers in the entire Imperium. He's he's not really immortal, but they say he's basically overcome the Black Rage. So basically, he's nigh invincible now. He has a force sword, so he basically has a sword that can cut through almost anything. He walks around with a plasma pistol. He has obviously Space Marine armor on. He's a Space Marine, so he's incredibly fast and dangerous. To give you a little feat of strength that he once did, he was in a Thunderhawk gunship, and an entire swarm of Tyranids gargoyles were basically dominating the skies. And he basically opened up the bay. He was like, "I'll see you guys." Formed magic wings out of his back, went up there and mind nuked all the things that went back into his thing. He's dummy. He's one of those people where they keep coming up for crazy things for him to do.
Yeah.
So he is physically
Superior.
yeah, high end werewolf /
I'd say beyond werewolf.
yeah.
A werewolf in power armor.
And he's magic in raw magic,
Right.
I break the earth into.
Mm-hmm.
Right, you can't do anything mind-wise because he's got the whole psyker thing going.
Yeah, he's just like, no.
Yeah.
So,
It would be wild magic almost.
so he starts chewing through the chain. Where do you think he gets up to?
I mean, absolutely neonate's not even a.
No.
I mean,
I don't even see how.
yeah, Methuselah's. You would need a very specific skill set.
I think he'd be hunting down antediluvians.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think,
And it would be in a case-by-case basics of some like ancient evil. Did they get away?
Mhm.
Did they manage to get into him? Did they?
right.
And that's not even like fanboying. I think it's just, that's what the dummy comparison is.
Mm.
You know, like I said, it's a weird thing, but I just don't want to save that one. So I want to pre-40 candidates. Yeah. All right. This one's for Max. All right. So where are we going with Methuselah, maybe antediluvian, Cain, or Raziel if you really want to do it.
Cain.
I don't think anything can stop Raziel.
No, because he dissolves and he comes back, and
He's a vampire hunter, basically.
Yeah.
He's feeding off vampires. So
Well,
this is
so,
Legacy of Cain, Soul Reaver. that series.
Okay.
he's vampire Jesus.
Basically,
So, and the whole thing is like, all the shit you talk about, like, there's magical power, there's magical weapons, there's every power a vampire's ever had, it's in him. Plus, he can walk around with data,
yeah, true. Absolutely.
and
He's the pillar guardian of balance. He basically or temporarily slew the god of death. Like,
it's, yeah. So, I mean, like, you're talking, like, plus the dude has access to time travel.
time travel creates his own
Might be
paradox.
a problem, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like,
And he's carrying himself around.
technically, it's like
Carrying his son around.
Yeah.
the only thing he had to worry about is like elder gods and like other dimensional beings that came in, and so I'm like, the whole thing is like, to me, neonates Methuselah is completely thrown out of the thing. Maybe, I mean, technically he's sired antediluvians, because it's like, when you go back and you're like, those things went on to have a whole bloodline, each with their own powers and weaknesses. He's more, it's the same fucking name, really. So it's like,
I'm impressed that we kind of thought the same thing. I picture him that if you turned, like, if you like some made a horrible video game of Cain going into Vampire the Masquerade, the game would be about him hunting down Cain's children, the three, and like Raziel killing all the antediluvians. Like, that would be the story.
if you went back and you're like, okay, Cain, when he was first became a vampire,
Oh yeah.
there's that, but then it's like thousands of years later,
Yeah.
he's just like a fucking living god.
He had his heart ripped out, and he was just like, "Thank you, this frees me."
Finally.
Plus, just awesome voice acting.
Yeah.
Plus, I have a sword that just eats your soul.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you're screaming. Oh, this is
Possessed
great.
by my spirit of my first child. It's like,
Pretty much.
Basically forged a, creature that devoured vampire souls and let it loose on the world. And then I convinced it to willingly become my sword for me. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. So from,
that's me fanboying.
yeah, I know.
So-
No, I think so. I don't think it's, once again, you're talking about stories of stakes and stuff. And like, I mean, Cain was basically dealing with like the gods of, like a servant of the god of death. It was like controlling time and stuff. And he was trying to kill an elder god. He's up there. He's basically like the vampiric Hercules going to go punch, the real Cain in the face. And then you're going to talk about like gods versus demigods.
That's going to get real emo for a while.
But Mephisto.
But Mephisto.
Bellatar.
Okay, here's one. This one that, like, from one that Max would
Technically, Mephisto would just be like, I can't have all these exterminated.
That's the best 40K. It's just like, it's gone too far. It's gone too far.
Yeah,
God's
just
a
do it
kid.
all.
No, we're just deploying.
They can't go.
Oh, all the antediluvians are on that one planet? This
That's
isn't a problem.
not such an easy choice. Okay, so from the realm of fandom, Max's side, let's go to something that me and Owen would know of. This one probably, like I said, not positioned well in the ranking now that we're talking about it. However, still weird character to throw into this. Shaltir from Overlord. So we're talking about like a video game vampire character with all the magic items.
Yeah. Yeah.
So claimed to be the strongest of the four guardians right behind Gargantua, superhuman strength, superhuman durability, speed, magic. Shaltyr's magic is power enough to rival with Ain's Gowns. She can use her magic to regenerate missing limbs, wounds, greater teleportation, create massive explosion, invisibility, and many more. She seems able to travel through the air unaided, though her mana supply may be a factor. As a vampire, she's able to turn others in vampire, albeit with far weaker powers and strength significantly less than hers, and generally a ghoul-like sentience.
Plus her sword.
Oh, yeah.
I guess that would be included in the magical items and stuff. I mean, Neonate is...
Yeah. They're not here anymore.
I mean, if we're going by the anime, I mean, basically she destroyed like what would be like a town-sized area in her fight with Ain's. I mean, I think an antediluvian would have
I think she's
trouble.
slugging away those big characters. Like in Vampire the Masquerade lore, characters that like went to battle and destroyed a town, she's right up there slugging them out. And that is the fourth generation and third generation.
Yeah.
That's where I think she's at.
And again, according to the anime, while she fights, she's getting all of her strength. Like if the person bleeds, she's getting her strength back.
Just killing some mortals on the way there, feeling really great about it. Yeah, it was a good anime series. Seasons are hit or miss, but in total, it's a very good anime. Okay, speaking of anime, this one's another one where it's like there is no. So another Alucard from Hellsing.
Okay, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, right. Like
because it's never. Every time you're like, oh shit, he's getting his ass kicked, like he just puts it in another gear and he's like, you just don't understand what you're fighting.
So let's talk about some things here, right? Of why this is such a horrible like discussion. Superhuman strength, right? So as a transcendent vampire, Alucard is inherently strong. To start, his guns Jackal and Casel are far too unwieldy for a human to hold, let alone use, but he does use them with ease. He has been seen going up to bare-handed against even supernatural weapons and destroying them. Despite armor, Alucard was able to disembowel and tear apart several police officers with one hand. The extent of his strength is unknown, though it appears to vary with the release state he is in, as his restraint form has significantly greater feats of strength and durability than his other forms. Superhuman speed, reflexes, basically letting him catch magic bullets with his teeth. Superhuman durability and endurance, basically taking most damage without flinching or even making a sound. Essentially, he was in a ship, crashed, and he just basically walks out of it without a problem. He has hematophagy, which is basically Alucard can consume blood raw. He has basically drinks blood. His feeding habits have been seen to vary from traditional neck biting to simply ripping people to pieces and outright devouring them. Aestivation, which is basically if he goes for blood too long, he enters a dormant state, but they don't believe that they can starve him to death.
Mm-hmm. They tried.
Chemokinesis, where he basically has the ability to manipulate blood. Seems limited to blood outside his body, as he's never seen influencing the blood of enemies when they are intact. So basically, he can do heavy tumor stuff right after that.
As he rips people apart, their blood becomes something he can use.
Enhanced regeneration. He has the ability to perfectly and quickly recover from any physical injury.
Yeah.
He has been torn to shreds by conventional weaponry and holy weaponry designed to kill his kind, and has survived all of it. Holy weapons, while they do affect him more, are regenerated less the same. He has a third eye. So he has senses that are not only sharper than immortals, affording him abilities such as perfect accuracy, but he has abilities that they completely lack. In particular, he possesses a third eye, which allows him to see things from far, far distances. Though he never uses it to do so, he can likely see through things that fool human eyes, such as Ceres does when facing Zorn Blitz. Blah, blah, blah. Dark composition. Though he generally dons a corporeal humanoid form, Alucard is made up of a highly variable otherworldly substance that is black in core and reddish on its edges. This can especially be seen when he takes heavy damage, the darkness being immune to conventional weaponry. Along with this composing his being, it can serve as a weapon. Intangibility. Alucard has the ability to walk through solid objects such as walls. Shape-shifting. Though form is of no particular importance to him, Alucard claims to be able to change into anything. Mist body, telepathy, teleportation, telekinesis, hypnosis, gravity defiance, weather manipulation, resistance to vampire weaknesses, soul absorption.
So I think we kind of get the point.
Yeah, like he's
Exterminatus.
Yeah, exterminatus.
basically like
Even then,
he's like one of again. He gets into the point where like, what is the story meant to do?
Yeah,
like,
he's like I said. Every time something happens, you're like, oh, that's the end of him. Like he just
anime.
yeah, anime comes back. He's a Mary Sue, and really in the whole thing. But it's interesting. It is a very good series. There's an older series and a newer series that kind of retells the older series, but it's very good. And yeah, I mean, no one would be able to touch him.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where they're like, well, Kane could kill him, and you're like, no, I think someone would write a story about that. It would be a whole thing.
Yeah,
and like they said, like the Alucard's really only even capable of being killed, like basically when he hits his level 0 and lets all his souls out, and that's when he's like at his weakest. But like, why would he do that?
Right?
Yeah. So the final one, which is just as absurd, and I don't know if Max knows enough about this guy, but Mandrake the Dark Monitor, basically, apparently,
Is that like DC?
Yep. So apparently,
That one I don't know.
Like he killed the other monitors, so he's like the vampire monitor who's going around killing the other monitors.
I mean, you're talking about the anti-monitors like to destroy reality.
Yeah, and this guy is apparently
Killed him.
more powerful. Apparently, they started sending like Superman Prime and all these other people after him. And,
see,
power
as
scaling.
bad as anime gets with the whole like each season, each episode is form and jump. Like, oh, they think you defeated me. Well, I unleashed my secret power thing. Comic books are 100 times fucking worse. Because just like when you have a popular character, it's like we will rewrite the rules, we will retcon the fuck out of everything just to, make this more interesting.
Yeah.
So.
Love how they're like basically like, oh no, this superhero character like can lift the like unliftable object and can't be stopped. And then they just have a new character walks on and punches him in the stomach and he collapses. And you're like, what does that mean?
I can only do that one time.
It's just, yeah, power scaling just kind of gets to the point.
Well, I punched through reality into another reality and then started the whole.
See, the only time I like that is when it's the Hulk doing it.
Yeah,
it's just like he just got so mad.
It's just to me that like, oh, I mean it's off topic, but that ended it. World War Hulk was as strong as anything should get.
Yeah, it's impossible. All right, any vampires that you wanted to discuss? I did kind of leave some out that came up during my discussions, but I think because they were kind of derivative of what we've already discussed.
Yeah, honestly, the ones I really wanted to touch on, you pretty much hit, because I was like, Edward, definitely. Let's just have him get pounded. Interview with the Vampire, I wanted to kind of get into that one. Blade, I kind of wanted to get into that one. And then he threw a few that I wasn't thinking of in there.
I kind of spent a couple days trying to pick various ones while...
I got one. It's like Dracula from like Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Bram Stoker.
Or just the only crazy powerful version of that I've ever seen was Dracula Untold, where it's just all of a sudden, like, oh, he turns into a legion of bats and he controls the weather.
Oh, yeah.
That kind of shit.
Yeah, I think depending on the take on Bram Stoker's Dracula that they show, like, it's clearly like, okay, so this is the thing I kind of thought I was going to get into this whole time, was the concept of like the difference between a character's power in a story and the character's power in something tangible like a video game.
Right.
Like a lot of the characters we brought up are like tangible in a video game where they're like Mephiston is the pretty much example. Like all his feats and stuff are like very gamified, directional kind of stuff. Like Dracula, like in the stories and stuff, like cast a shadow across London.
Yeah.
And that's like this kind of metaphysical thing where you're like, what exactly is that mean?
What
Does that
mean?
What does that mean? Like he's affecting things on such a big basis. Like it's kind of like the Lord of the Rings thing where like it's the spell, non-spell thing.
Yeah.
Like it's not a codified like explanation for what he's doing, but his presence is causing all these things to happen. So like he is one of the most powerful vampires, but in the stories that are told, he kind of has to be like killable.
Yeah. I mean, it's a kid.
And that's the thing is once you put him into a system that has rules, you're like, well, if he's killable, then like a neonate might be able to go after him. And you're like, yeah, but that doesn't feel right. But in Vampire the Masquerade, he is a character and he's a Methuselah and he's not going to go down very easily,
So who do you think would win? A Methuselah or Gary Oldman? It's like every time they kill him, another one of his characters shows up.
They just start going through all these characters.
It will never end.
Well, I started something I cannot stop.
You got the League of Draculas. You got Bela Lugosi, Christopher Lee, Gary Oldman.
The most powerful. Leslie Nielsen.
Renfield.
Unstoppable.
What about Nosferatu?
That was actually on one of the variants of this list.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just didn't know enough about it.
Oh, for a remake of it? Oh, I didn't know that.
Good.
Really?
From the previews, it looks good.
Are they keeping like the ultra creepy look?
Yes. It's literally like
just
Nosferatu modern version of it. I think Willem Dafoe's in it, but he's not Dracula. He might be Van Helsing.
Yeah, I think so. So I seen him on screen when like yelling like conviction.
I think I have seen that now that you mention it.
Did you guys read speaking of when I talked about Lestat, all of her books?
Did you read it? No.
I was curious because I don't know the background on that. You guys do.
So what I know from reviews and, the synopsis kind of stuff I read, it's nothing like that. That Queen of the Damned movie
was absolutely awful.
Yeah, it was not what happened in the books.
Yeah.
Most of her shit was literally just like homoerotic. They're in love. They think each other beautiful, like that kind of shit.
Yeah, because like the original vampires in her story was a man and a woman from Egypt, and basically they turn into stone because they're so old or whatever.
Yeah, I mean that was in the Queen of the Damned movie.
Yeah. But and Lestat finally manages to wake her up.
Yeah. I mean, I think that her story, and once again, this is just me talking out of my rear, but like from everything I've been exposed to, there's like a continuum between like, Vampire the Masquerade that basically is like, okay, let's take all of vampire lore and distill it into something that makes sense. And then Twilight. And like Interview with a Vampire is somewhere probably closer to Vampire the Masquerade in some of its forms, but it was still working in that direction. It was like, we're headed this way.
True Blood.
That was, I was going to put in there. I just didn't have a lot to talk about.
Those ones, despite where the show went, they were interesting in like a few aspects. Like number one, the older they get, obviously far stronger and all that, but also the more their weaknesses affected them. Because it was literally like, you seen Bill Compton could walk, he would start burning alive as he's walking through like sunlight and all that, but then like Eric Sire literally just exploded as soon as the sun rose, that kind of shit. So I'm like, as far as they go, like where do you fit them? Because like they could fly. Like they showed like Eric flying, but then they also show Russell. It was my favorite character in that whole thing. Was like just walking on TV and ripping somebody's head off, or just like destroying a room full of like elders, including one they called like the Roman and all that shit. So like where would he fit? Because that'd be probably your most powerful one out of all of them.
Yeah, it's kind of in that whole thing. Like I said, like all these variants that are so close that you're like, well, now we need to talk about individuals from that vampire clan. And you're like, well, how did they all kind of go together and stuff? But, well, I think we did what we needed to do here. I think it was fun. Did you guys have fun?
I'll be confused anymore.
Yeah.
I introduced them to new legends that they can go check out.
Maybe some of the stuff that we mentioned you want to go check out.
If you haven't checked out Legacy of Kings stuff, I highly recommend it.
Do
Making
it.
a remake.
The remakes, yeah, Soul Reaver 1 and 2 being remade.
Oh, really?
Well, I remastered.
Oh.
Yeah, it's
There's
not a
some
remake.
reskin.
You're
and but they added stuff. So,
Fix some of the
Just go
problems
back
with
and
them.
redo the whole thing, like cohesively.
but
Like so that
It would be nice.
if you're gonna go into do the Soul Reaver 1 and 2 things,
Play like a Sea of King.
yeah, make sure you check out the original Blood Omen.
Or at least
you can
watch someone playing it so you can understand
Yeah.
the story.
you get the whole.
yeah, keep hearing the scream of the sword.
Mhm.
I learned how much
Very
I'm lacking in my vampire knowledge. All these new vampires I've heard about.
There's a lot of
There's we really just kind of scratched the surface.
yeah, we had a bunch of different recommendations.
All the vampires from What We Do in Shadow.
Yeah, I tried to pare everything down to like
That series.
example.
It's very good.
I love the movie.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
We're werewolves, not swearwolves.
Spits the dog. All right, so I think this is the end of 2024 Tabletop by Night, guys.
This is
Yeah.
the end.
Any final things you guys want to say to the season? Final goodbyes to anybody who's brave enough to listen this far.
Goodbyes? I hope not.
I think it's more like
So
see you
next
soon.
Yeah, see you next time.
See you next year, something like that.
After these messages, we'll be right back.